Hey there, I first want to thank everyone for tuning into my webinar today. And I also want to thank Mood Treatment Center and Carolina Behavioral Health Alliance for sponsoring this webinar among a series of other free webinars due to the recent pandemic. And they're all related to ways you can manage your mental health with all the recent changes that have taken place. My name is Kaitlyn Boone, and I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor in Winston-Salem, North Carolina with Mood Treatment Center. I work with children using art and play-based therapies. I'm not yet a registered play therapist, but I'm training to become one. I am not yet a certified art therapist, but I believe art can be used in many ways in everyday therapy. The title of my presentation is You, Your Child, Creativity in a Pandemic. And it's about parents being stuck at home with their kids during the quarantine that we're currently experiencing. I want to present a new way to think about surviving quarantine with your 5 to 12-year-old at home. I want you to think about different ways of imagining and representing emotions alongside your child as they're experiencing and imagining emotions. This is a major life event, and parents are experiencing it as the same and at the same time, but in a different way than their children are. Before we get started, I want to talk about the importance of being real with your children, but being real with yourself first. It's really important for parents to acknowledge how they feel and whether those emotions be fear, disappointment, loss, whatever it is. Parents need to acknowledge that so that they can help their kids. You know the saying, if mom's not happy, no one's happy. And that's the truth. Parents, think about what you need to feel calm. Think about what you need to do to feel comforted so that you can comfort your little ones. It's very important also to acknowledge all the changes that have happened. Focus on what you can still do together. Focus on ways that you can create new norms with your kids. Often parents want to be the ones that take care of everything. They want to be the ones that create all the new norms that are going to happen. But I would encourage you to find ways to make your children feel like they have a part to play in the new normal that you're creating in your home. Create a schedule together. And kids can digest the truth. It's all about the way that you serve it to them. That's why I've included a really helpful book that I actually found through childlife.org. And it's about the coronavirus. We don't have a lot of information yet to give to kids about the coronavirus because we're the first ones who've ever experienced it. But this is a really helpful little book. You can print it as a PDF and it explains the coronavirus to kids. I think a lot of the times what I see is parents thinking that they're shielding their children from bad news that would hurt them, but ultimately children will resent you, the adult, from keeping information from them because kids always know when something's not right. So be honest with your kids about what's happening. Find ways, if they're little, to explain what's happening. Okay, so before we talk about creativity, I think we should talk about grief because we are currently experiencing a major grief. Our country is, our homes are, and I think it's important to talk about that. Consider having a jar, a box, a bowl in your kitchen, whatever you have. Have your kids write down things that they're going to miss, things that are hard for them, and put it into the jar, put it into the bowl, put it in the box. You could even be creative and get some blank stationery, put the stationery in an envelope, and put that envelope in the box. Take turns reading those things out loud around the kitchen table or around the family room. It's important to talk about what's changed and what you're going to miss. This is a great time to talk about grief. It's a subject we don't mention often with our kids. A book that I really love that I use in therapy a lot is The Fall of Freddie the Leaf. It's a story of life for all ages, but that's just one book. There are many others. There's Jungle Journey. There is the movie The Land Before Time. There's The Lion King. There's the movie When a Monster Calls. There's so many books and movies about grief, really great ways that you can explain loss, life, and transition to your little ones. Okay, so let's talk about creativity and what you're going to need to be creative with your kids. Do you have everything that you need? You might have to order some stuff on Amazon, or you might find that you already have these supplies in your home already. Consider having a mixed media notebook. Consider having lined journals or notebooks. Consider having computer papers, folders on hand, sketchbooks, watercolors, pastels, crayons, colored pencils, markers, gel pens, regular pens and pencils. Have glue sticks, have Mod Podge, hot glue guns, sponge brushes, regular paint brushes. And very important, have lots of magazines that you can tear apart, that you can get images out of. Have old books on hand. Newspapers would be great, especially for what we're going to do together. Current newspapers, especially. Okay, now that you have all of your art supplies and everything you're going to need, let's talk about the place where you are creating with your child, because that matters too. You want to memorialize these moments because this is a season that you're always going to remember with your child. Your child will look back and say, do you remember when we did that together? That was our special place. I would encourage you to have a place and a time that remains, for the most part, give or take about the same. You want to make a new ritual, and this ritual will be part of your new schedule. It doesn't have to be 7 days a week, but it should be most days of the week. We do this together. We create. We remember. We have a time that we talk about what's happening. Consider giving this space a really fun name or cute name, or it doesn't have to be cute. It could be like the Phil's 2020 Squad, or Quarantine, the Real World 2020, whatever you want to call it. Consider decorating it. Consider having it maybe in a corner of the parent's office or a corner of the child's bedroom. Make it a place that there's not going to be a lot of interruptions. And also, maybe you're going to have a special snack while y'all create, or you could have a playlist that y'all made together playing in the background. This is your ritual where y'all get to create together. And so always remember that the time and the place, they matter. All right. To externalize feelings. Well, what does that mean? Externalizing feelings is pretty much making the story come to life, because what you're doing is you are making it the colors problem. You turn it into the character's issue. You blend it into the paint's confusion. Or you make a confession to your journal to absorb. Art is a secret language, and it's a language that only our creations can truly understand. And writing sets emotions free to be whatever they need to be. So do what you need to do, say what you need to say. And I would also encourage parents to maybe model this in the very beginning to little ones. because children will naturally do this. Children naturally do this through art and through play, but maybe consider giving your artwork a title. This artwork was actually created by a close friend of mine who is an artist, gave me permission to share this. She called it My Brain. So that's a great way of externalizing art. Give it a title. I feel so red sometimes, or it felt like blue. Sometimes it's like a lion, sometimes it's like a storm. That's externalizing. Okay, now before I go any further, I also want to say that I'm taking a Q&A throughout this whole presentation. So I'm going to answer questions at the very end. So if listeners have questions, just go ahead and type those in, and I'll be answering them when I'm done with everything. Okay. Every emotion has a story. As you create, emotions evolve. And that's why when you start off painting something, it's really different at the very end. Or when you start to make something, it takes on a different form when it's done. When you start to write a story, often if you're a creative writer, you think you're writing about one thing, but then it turns into something different. And our emotions are very much that way. I think that's very metaphorical in a lot of ways with emotions. This is a great time to talk with your children using art and using stories as metaphors about how emotions can be very contradicting. I felt scared, but I also felt brave. I felt excited, but also felt disappointed. And showing how life has very contradicting emotions. A really awesome children's book that I've not shown a picture of in my presentation is called Double Dip Feelings. And I use double dip feelings all the time in therapy. It talks about those very contradicting emotions. But naturally, you will be talking about that through creating with your child. A great example of every emotion having a story is, your child may be writing and they'll say, it feels like a roaring lion, but it looks so sad. It started out blue, but then it turned black. It was supposed to be an image of my family, but then now I'm not sure what it is. Or the parent might say, at first this was all about missing the office, but now I don't know what this is about. Emphasizing that through every emotion having a story, every creation having a way of being ongoing and changing. Okay, so speaking of stories and speaking of art, every story has parts that we love and every story has parts that we hate. And this is true of what we're making and creating too with our children. Consider the favorite parts of your books that you love. Consider favorite parts of movies that you love. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to write or create about loss or change and disappointment while creating with your child. Give your child freedom to create or write about loss and change that they're experiencing too. Scary art is not bad art. Sad stories should be told. Rage needs to be seen. Happiness is okay when everything else isn't. Funny parts help get us through. And that's really important. Again, we're going back to this metaphor of just like in stories, these things are natural. In our own lives, these are natural. This is going to be evident in our art. So parents, feel free to write about disappointment. Doesn't mean you're necessarily sharing every little thing with your child, but you want to model. You want to be open and honest with your kids, that they see you're at least creating. I also think this is a great time for kids to see art is very safe because parents can create something hard that they couldn't necessarily talk about with their kids, but they're still doing it. And kids can see that. And I think that's important. And then kids feel free to create without having to necessarily say what it's about. Okay, so there is no cure yet. No one actually knows what's going to happen. Another great metaphor of where we are right now. Your child may say, when does the story end? When are we going to stop doing this ritual? When is things going to go back to normal? And this is a chance to say, we're using metaphors to explain the uncertainty of the future through stories and art. You can say some seasons are like really bad winters, or they're like really, really long summers that are dry, but all stories have an ending. We're just the first characters that have ever lived through this one. So we don't know the ending yet. We just don't know. But we know that every story does have an ending. Refer back to favorite movies and stories about characters looking for the end together. We're looking for the end together through the stories and through the things that we're making together. Your child may say to you, but what if I run out of space? And you can say, well, you know what? There's always part 2. There's the great trilogy, and there's the season finale. So we got to keep creating. And parents, you can always go on Amazon.com if you need to get more art supplies. So we're going to just keep creating. I also say that with mentioning, you might need to pause at some point and come back to it. And I say that kind of knowing that we don't know a lot about the coronavirus yet. So you might want to let your child decide how the story ends. There's still so much we don't know. There's a chance we could get out of quarantine and then be back in quarantine. And until there's a vaccine, I hate to say it, but this is probably not going to be the final ending for a lot of children and their families until a vaccine is officially in place. So I would consider having this ritual on pause if you need it to be on pause, and then coming back to it as you need to. Consider maybe if you come out of quarantine or if you'll take a break from it, keeping it in place as something you do once every other week, or maybe something that you do once every other day if they want to. It's up to the child. But emphasizing again that metaphor of this is an ongoing story and there's still a lot that we don't know. Again, going back to those other stories like Star Wars, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 million, the Harry Potter series, the Vampire Diaries. All of these are stories that just keep going, but they finally do have an end. And that's like our story too. Okay, so speaking of things finally coming to an end, glass slippers, magical spells, and finding your way back home. Oh my. These are the reasons we read stories. These are the reasons that we watch great movies. These are the things that keep us going. It's called hope. Hope is so, so, so important. Hope is very much the thing that keeps us doing what we're doing. Consider the hope that makes Make-A-Wish Foundation so wonderful, and all the hope that it brings to countless kids who are telling their story of fighting a really critical health condition. That hope matters, and we've seen it matter to those kids. It's very evident. So find the thing that you're looking most forward to. Find a reason that your character never gives up. The picture that best represents your strengths. Consider having decorations and special creation space with pictures or word images of things that you're hopeful about. things that inspire you to keep going, or things that make you feel most loved, because that matters very much so. So when this thing with the coronavirus is all said and done years from now, you and your child are going to look back together and your child's going to say, that's not the way I remembered it. Because these are two stories, same outlook, a different view. Y'all are telling a story together, but from two totally different perspectives. And I would respect that. Listen to your child's story, share yours if they ask, but again, don't share everything. Observe and reflect, but I would avoid any type of correction or instruction. And I think it's really easy for parents to instruct, but, oh, are you sure you want to use that color? Or are you sure you want your story to go like that? Wouldn't it make more sense if you did this or that, or da da da? And I would really, really avoid doing that. You want to constantly go back to that observe, reflect, observe, reflect. Well, what does it mean to observe exactly? Well, a great example might say, you're using so much black today, or you sure are writing a lot over there. You're using a lot of different images today. Great example of reflecting might be, you call this chapter the little lost panda. I wonder why he feels so lost. Keep conversations open-ended, very open-ended. That's important. You don't want to necessarily ask direct questions, especially when it comes to art. Art is very open-ended. Have your child share if they want to, but do not pressure them if they don't want to. And maybe consider finding small things to share about yours that are appropriate. Okay. So when I think about what it means to be a human, and when I think about the ability to be creative, I think that is one of the most human things about us. To be able to put things together to express how we feel, to change your story into a fantasy, to code our emotions, really in a way that only we can understand. It's very, very special. This is a difficult time, but it can also be a very special time to remember with your child. As adults, we often shield our children from harsh topics such as grief, loss, and trauma. But those are really important, and they're hard parts of life. And they're parts that we need to be able to talk with our kids about. This is an opportunity for parents to share and model in ways that make us most human, which is, of course, by being creative. So I've included on this last slide, I have one more after this to show you, but this is a really excellent resource for parents. They can easily get it online. It's called See What I'm Saying, What Children Tell Us Through Their Art, and it's by Dr. Myra Levick. Really, really great book, very easy for parents, for anyone working with kids. Great book. Okay, so I want to remind you guys on April 10th at 11:30, Dr. Aiken will be doing a free webinar about, it's called Brain Food, and it's about ways to manage your mood through your diet. Okay. So I would also consider watching an awesome and free webinar that was done on Monday, and it's all about teenagers being turned into night owls by quarantine. Dr. Aiken holds the cure with blue light blocking glasses and dawn simulators. You can watch it now for free on YouTube. Just search the antiviral guide for better sleep. Okay, so now I'm going to be answering some questions from people during our presentation. Okay. All right, so our first question says, what might I say to my kids to introduce setting up our new space and ritual? How do I set the stage? Okay, that's a really great question. I would kind of go back to that part of the presentation where I was talking about having a space in your house that kind of remains the same. And honestly, even if y'all live in a small space, that's okay. It can just be a corner of your kid's bedroom or a corner of your room. And the way that you set it up could just be some small paper decorations or just like a sign like that one I made with a silly name that you have on it. Make it unique. Be creative, be imaginative in how you do it. Okay, next question. Do you have ideas how we can do an art field trip outside? We are trying to get out in the yard more. Okay, let's see here. Wow, ideas for how we can do an art field trip outside. Okay, I'm going to throw this out there, just an idea. Can't go to the art museums, can't go to any kind of museum right now. It's a real bummer. But you could be a little bit creative and you could maybe even do, what if you did an art scavenger hunt outside instead of an Easter egg hunt? We know Easter's coming up. What if you had kind of clues to finding different kinds of art in your backyard? If you don't have a backyard, what if you live in an apartment? Maybe there's a way that you could do it. Well, maybe if you're not able to play on the playground, you could even do it in your home, or you could do it somewhere nearby that you could practice social distancing. That's just an idea. Okay, next question. What if I have more than one kid? Do I need to work with them individually? Oh, that's a really awesome question. So initially, when I was talking in the beginning about what I'll miss the most, I actually intended for parents and families to do this with their whole family. And I love the idea of whether you're a single mom with 3 kids or whether you're a mom and a working dad with 3 kids or 1 kid. Do it together. Everybody, the more the better. You can have one bedroom be the whole creation space for everybody. Turn someone's room into an art studio for the family. Okay. Next question. What are the first 3 activity setups for the day? Okay, let's see here. When I get off this webinar and set up this space, what are the first 3 activity setups for the day? Okay, so it sounds like what this person is wondering is, what they should do to get started. And I would say to this person, look around your home or wherever you're living and see what art supplies you have from what I mentioned earlier. And if you're missing anything, the first thing you want to do is maybe go online and get whatever is missing. And make sure you have all your supplies. But then before you even start getting creative, I would definitely have the night where you talk about what you're going to miss. Maybe set it up to talk about grief, to talk about loss with your family. That's going to be really important. Okay. All right. What if your child twists doing these rituals and making art? Or, oh wait, sorry. They said, what if your child resist doing these rituals and making art. All right, I love that question. That's really great. And, you know, this happens to us all the time who do therapy. We constantly have children coming into our space that don't want to play and don't want to do art because they don't want to even be there. So my answer to that would be just keep doing the art, but whatever you do, parents, do not tell them how to make the art or what it should be about. Just say, you know what, mommy's over here drawing about her feelings, or you don't even have to say that. You could say, mommy's going to be over here drawing and creating, and then you can draw or create if you want to, but this is our special ritual time together. So you can either choose to eat your snack over there in the corner and you don't have to create, or you can choose to join in and create. And I guarantee if they see you making stuff and they see that you're not really bothered by them not making anything, they will join in. They will definitely want to be making stuff with you. That is guaranteed. Okay. All right, this next question is about someone who primarily works with adults. That this person says, I mainly work with adults with mental health issues. What are some suggestions I can pass along to them to engage with children in an artistic way to reduce anxiety for both the parent and the child? Really, everything I've talked about today can easily be shared with an adult. Maybe you have a friend, you've thought about a friend. Maybe you're single and you've watched this and you thought about a friend that's a single mom and you really want to help them out. Why don't you share some of these things today? Maybe be that friend to them. So like in the beginning when I was talking about the adult getting calm, listen to that adult, validate them, reassure them so that they can be calm and help their kids to get calm. That might be a great first step. You could be the best friend just by doing that and then sharing some of these things with them. All right, next question. My child is comparing this quarantine to me and my husband's separation. How do you suggest incorporating other trauma and big feelings? Wow, that is a great question and something that is going to be part of this whole experience, because on top of us being in a pandemic, we already have our other underlying issues going on, like separation, divorce, depression, anxiety, issues at work. All those things still exist, but on top of all that, now we've got a pandemic on our hands. So that will also, again, art and storytelling is natural. Creativity is natural. So let your kids share what they want to share through their art. And I would even maybe set this activity up like this is about the pandemic and this is about recent changes, but it's also about their individual story, your individual story, and your individual story has to do with all the underlying stuff that was already there. So that's just going to come up in the images and the stories that are being created. Okay. All right. All right, and I just want to go over really quickly the information again from that I mentioned from Dr. Aiken's video that's on YouTube, and it's free for anyone who's interested. It was made on Monday, and it's on Mood Treatment Center's YouTube channel, and it is awesome. And the reason I want to mention it is because there have been a lot of parents who have been reporting issues with their teenagers basically turning into night owls due to this quarantine because everyone's schedule's been thrown off. And he's going to mention in that webinar some really important information to help parents, to help their teens kind of get back on schedule, get sleep in check. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be really helpful. Okay. All right. One more question. I have two boys, one who's 12 and one who is 13. One loves to create arts and crafts and one hates it. How do I engage the one who refuses to engage in arts? All right, that's a great question. Art is not just painting. Art is not just collaging. Art is a million different things. Art, again, is being creative. Being creative is part of being human. Finding ways to show that to your child is important. It helps them to see that their favorite movies that they love to watch are art. Their favorite books that they love to read are art. Talk about different modes of art, whether it be writing, whether it be acting, whether it be making a play, making a comic strip, making a playlist. If they like music, have them make a playlist. Use all these different things, pull them in. I guarantee that your child does like art. They just don't know that they like art because they're thinking about art from one perspective. You can open that window to show them many different perspectives. Okay, that looks like all the questions that I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. Oh, wait, we might have one more question. Let's see. Oh, no, I think that's it. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. I hope you found it helpful, and hope you guys get to creating and making a lot of memories. Thank you for tuning in.